What I want to talk to you today about is the difference between reflex and reaction. Reflex and reaction. Reflex is that involuntary. It's a reaction, but it's the involuntary movement that happens when, like the doctor hits you in the knee. It's the involuntary piece where it's sort of that lizard brain that says, hey, there's a saber-toothed tiger in the area, you need to run, right? It's that unconscious thing that happens. And the reaction is something that is our choice. I think oftentimes what ends up happening is we choose to use we choose to use the word reflex when what we really mean is reaction. Because here's the thing, if it's reflex, it's involuntary. Involuntary means it's not my fault. It's not my responsibility. If I say it's a reaction, it means the opposite, right? It means I made a decision, I made a choice to behave, use words, whatever, react in a particular way. And so what I wanted to do is it was sort of a funny deal. So Shannon had this great idea, and by the way, this was out of COVID-19, one of the blessings. We started doing these family movie nights, and she had this great idea that, hey, listen, let's watch Back to the Future. Let's watch the trilogy, right? There's 3 of them. Let's watch all 3 of them. And there's a scene in there where Marty McFly, like we go into the future, right? And you see Marty in the future, and he's broke. He's he's miserable. He kind of gets bullied. He's just sort of a sissy. And the scene is that he's getting fired. And, everybody's looking at like, wait a minute, how did he turn out so bad? Right. And the answer to that specific question was that he had made a decision earlier on in his life that had ended poorly. And what it was his sort of go-to reflex, if you will, to being called a chicken, to being called yellow, to being called scared. And, it's like, it's sort of the Rock, that gaze. So anytime anybody would ever say anything to Marty McFly about how he was a chicken, he would be like, nobody calls me chicken. And it goaded him into a situation that he ended up in an accident where I think he, whatever ended up happening is it changed his life forever. And yes, we have our go-to, but I find that all too often, I find myself blaming others for my mood or my words or actions. And again, yes, we do have our sort of go-to reflex to a situation, but we are 100% in control of our reactions, 100% in control of how I choose to respond to things that happen in my life. And we saw it later in Marty as he was able to rewrite the future. And the way he was able to do it is he went back and he chose to take responsibility for how he was going to react to this one particular person challenging him to a race. And his reflex was to say, nobody calls me chicken, but he chose to react in alignment with who he wanted to be. And he didn't take the bait. And as a result, his life was forever changed. As I looked at it, and here's where I really wanted to cheat and read this, because as I looked at it, to me, it was about humility. So walk with me here. If we start with the idea that what we're really talking about is humility, then in being humble, we accept that we actually do make mistakes. God forbid, we actually do make mistakes. Some of us a lot more than others. Okay. And given that we make mistakes and we're humble enough to say that we make, now we can admit to the mistakes that we make. And And by admitting to those mistakes, we actually pave the way to no longer try to hide those mistakes. And by not hiding those mistakes, we can now begin to take responsibility for those mistakes. And by being able to take responsibility for those mistakes, we can actually begin to change our reactions so that we make fewer of those mistakes. Ultimately, whether we're talking about the beginning, the end, the middle, all the way around, we have a choice. We have a responsibility to take responsibility for our actions and not simply call them reflexes. So I hope this week you will have, or this weekend, you will have an amazing weekend. Again, enjoy the day today, because it sounds like in most of our areas, the weather's going to be fantastic today and maybe not so fantastic tomorrow. So have a great week, and if you need anything from me, please reach out. Talk to you guys later.